Our group did our research on the Allegheny Health and Research Foundation. My name is Catherine.
My name is Ashley Kellison.
My name is Jessica Campi.
And my name is Syra Aslam.
In July 1998, the Allegheny Health Education and Research Foundation, AHERF, the largest not-for-profit health organization in the United States, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after a decade of exponential growth. So what led to the demise of the once prosperous organization that grew from 1 hospital to 14 hospitals? There were some industry-wide forces during the 1980s that were affecting all healthcare organizations, such as Medicare reimbursement cuts under the Balanced Budget Act of 1997, growth of managed care, and specifically in the AHERF region, the domination of health insurance market by 1 or 2 large commercial payers, which gave insurance leverage to reduce payment rates to hospitals. The demise of AHERF occurred mainly because of its internal factors, such as weak governance from the board because of their lack to change ineffective management of the CEO, Sheriff Abdelhak. Also, board members failed to probe into affairs of the organization, and executives were paid among the highest salaries in the business and sponsored lavish parties, mismanaging a lot of the company money. Here's a snapshot of AHERF's growth in a decade, assets increasing from $274 million to $2.2 billion, as well as an increase of employees due to its large expansion. In 1986, the Allegheny General Board elected Sheriff Abdelhak as president. Within the first year, he took control of the Medical College of Pennsylvania and issued $60 million in bonds. In 1991, Abdelhak acquired United Hospitals, Inc. and their $137 million bond debt, and issued another $60 million in bonds. In the following years, it acquired another university, forming one of the largest medical schools in the country in combination with Medical College of Pennsylvania, and issued more millions in bonds. Abdelhak also acquired other hospitals and overpaid for physician practices in hopes of increasing market share, but was not successful in managing the operations of the physician's practice. By the end of 1997, after an aggressive decade of acquisition and mergers and taking on debt from the mergers, AHERF's losses were closing in on $1 million a day. It accumulated a debt of more than $900 million, which led to its bankruptcy. The organization ended up having 10 different boards, 132 directors, and was left without an effective oversight of the overall organization, leaving Abdelhak with full control of the organization to move money around without the approval or knowledge of the board members.
Sheriff Abdelhak moved from Egypt to the United States in 1971 at the age of 25. He started working for Allegheny General Hospital as a food service coordinator. In 1988, during an interview, he stated, "I had 10 promotions in 11 years and never asked for one." Though this clearly is an exaggeration, it shows his desire to let everyone know about his successes. By 1982, he had gone from food service coordinator to vice president. And that same year, after being passed over for the vacant chief executive operations position, he left Allegheny General Hospital for Canonsburg General Hospital, south of Pittsburgh, and worked there as their CEO. In 1986, Abdelhak returned to Allegheny General Hospital as their chief executive officer, with a vision to build the largest integrated health system throughout Pennsylvania. Almost immediately after taking over the reins at Allegheny General Hospital, he started growing his empire. His first acquisition was Allegheny West, a failing hospital that his prior board at Canonsburg did not want to buy due to its overwhelming debt. From 1986 to 1993, as the CEO, Abdelhak built his empire, consisting of 14 hospitals, 100 physician offices, more than 300 physicians, 2 medical schools. When Allegheny Health Education and Research Foundation expanded into the Philadelphia area, they ended up taking on the debt from the 2 medical schools and the hospital systems they had acquired. Looking back at the years of Abdelhak's career, it becomes apparent David McClelland's 3 needs theory for motivation fits his professional life. McClellan's three needs theory has three motivators: achievement, affiliation, and power, all of which are present to varying degrees throughout Abdelhak's career. Abdelhak's need for success was a driving force throughout his career, and everything he did was to improve his social status. Abdelhak started out in food services and finished his career as a CEO, and believed given enough time he would be able to fix the financial status of the company he had ruined. We can see where achievement became more of a personal gain than for the health system. He believed he was saving the hospitals, schools, and physicians' offices, and they should provide him and AHERF unconditional loyalty. Abdelhak emanated power and was described as someone who conveyed power and confidence to everyone he met. After Abdelhak became the CEO, he was able to continue to acquire more and more power. He had the hospital system paying for his housing in order to keep it from his ex-wife. He also bought a company airplane that he used to fly to the Cayman Islands, among other places. After a while, many of those who had supported him in the past were starting to turn on him, stating he wanted to leave his subordinates, like the physicians and other administrators, without options, so they had to depend upon him. The need that identifies most with Abdelhak's early career is affiliation. Prior to leaving Allegheny in 1982, he was already known as the person to go to for items that were difficult to obtain. When Abdelhak returned to Allegheny General Hospital, it was not at the request of the board of directors, but at the request of the medical staff, who had remembered how he was able to acquire scarce medical equipment. It appears Abdelhak needed to be liked to such a degree that he would minimize Allegheny Hospital Education and Research Foundation's financial status to the board of directors throughout his time as CEO. At one time, he used a company retreat to gain the support of his coworkers when he announced the upcoming divorce from his wife and stated he would be escorted by two other women to company events. Along with his need for success and affiliation, Abdelhak also appears to have a charismatic, transformational leadership quality to him. During his time as CEO, Abdelhak would share his vision and goals with those around him, and in the process, he was able to successfully persuade them to believe. Though Abdelhak made some very unethical decisions and some very questionable purchases, he was able to communicate effectively with those around him to provide a positive influence on AHERF. Everything was looking good for AHERF until it was too late. Through his charismatic, transformational leadership, he was not only able to collect power through influencing superiors and employees, but he was also able to give all of them a collective identity, allowing them to believe he had their best interests at heart and bring success to their organization. Abdelhak acquired so much power that he was able to divert funds, take advantage of vague accounting regulations to hide the actual financial status, and had a board of directors that enjoyed all of the excitement and perks he had given them by making them money. He was able to circumvent the board of directors on many purchases, including the private plane, that he was also able to hide the dire financial picture by keeping all of the different entities' finances separate, making it near impossible for someone to notice the cash transfers and missing money from the hospital endowments. One of the many flaws for Sheriff Abdelhak were his personality traits, and they're probably at the top of the list. From the 5-factor model of personality, Abdelhak showed signs of conscientiousness early in his career, when he was making a name for himself. He appeared to be responsible, dependable, and achievement-oriented. However, there were quite a few times people noted signs of neuroticism. Robert McCrae and Paul Costa depicted neuroticism as using, quote, inappropriate coping responses like hostile reactions and wishful thinking because they must deal more often with disruptive emotions, end quote. Abdelhak would occasionally lash out or have inappropriate responses when someone would question his motives. At a welcoming speech for the Hahnemann University Hospital, he was noted to have given a great speech, but ended the speech with, quote, "Let me end this by saying one thing. Don't cross me or you will live to regret it." This is just one example of when he would make threatening or hostile responses without provocation.
If we look at the Allegheny Health and Research Foundation and analyzed their downfall we could demonstrate the concept of ethics as the main reason for their demise. Work ethic is a set of moral principles an employee must use in his or her job. The CEO, Sheriff Abdahak, made many questionable decisions that we could sum up as unethical. For instance, he liked to keep financial secrets about the organization to himself. What Abdahak did not disclose were the financing mechanisms used to fuel the growth, such as internal subsidies, hidden internal cash transfers, raids on hospital endowments, the enormous debt piled up from all the acquisitions, and the resulting fiscal deterioration of the system. Furthermore, there was never any accountability. Accountability is the condition for being held responsible for one's actions. Both the CEO and CFO always dismissed any accusations with how the organization was running. Essentially, they painted a picture making it seem like everything was going according to plan. The next issue was the work culture. Abdahak ran things as an authoritarian leader. An authoritarian leader is a style where the leadership demonstrates absolute rule over its members. In Abdahak's case, he believed his decisions were final and he could do anything he wanted. When it came to having negotiations, he refused to have any collaborative discussions with the board members. He was reported saying, "When you are talking to me, you are talking to the board. I have the authority to make this happen." If we were to compare his leadership methods to the dimensions in organizational politics, we would identify the tactics of pressure and legitimacy. These methods are not ideal to use. The majority of his team wanted more involvement in the processes. His board members admitted that most of the time they were not informed of his decisions until after the fact or right when he was about to implement them. There have been multiple studies that all prove that a bad atmosphere can damage a company. There are 5 work cultures that an organization can have that are considered ideal. The first one is open, skeptic environment, which allows individuals at all levels to share their ideas and question what is and isn't working. Then the next one is the individual-focused environment, which allows members to customize their own working styles. The third one is the no-walls environment, which focuses on keeping the team working together. The fourth is the mutual feedback environment that encourages communication to discuss what needs to be done. Lastly, the number 5 is unified environment, where everyone is considered an individual but are focused on succeeding as a team. The Allegheny Health and Research Foundation made apparent that none of the above cultures were improved. Instead, the culture that mostly resembles it is the class system environment concept. This culture is where the bosses can't be questioned, leaders can't be challenged, and employees must submit to whatever they're told. This environment breeds resentment and loses focus on ideas and cumulative productivity.
The Allegheny bankruptcy, in conclusion, is notable for a low degree of fiscal responsibility and accountability throughout its operations. As discussed, from 1986 through 1998, the Allegheny General Health System grew exponentially with far-reaching market share across the state. The financing mechanisms used to fund the growth, to include internal subsidies, hidden internal cash transfers, raids on hospital endowments, and the growing debt from acquisitions, resulted in fiscal deterioration of the system. Burns et al. Note several areas of questionable strategy by the AHERF leaders. Firstly, AHERF leadership should have recognized the small number of statewide payers, other than Medicare and Medicaid, and the small number of employers available to contract with an integrated health delivery system for services. Secondly, if AHERF had performed a market-wide assessment, they would have realized that they did not have enough market share to leverage managed care payers. Thirdly, the AHERF hospitals also took on significant capitated risk, while health maintenance organizations were providing limited reimbursement. This resulted in low capitated revenues and significant provider losses. Finally, post-merger implementation of new processes did not occur due to the rapidity of expansion. In addition, as part of the integrated delivery system strategy, Allegheny purchased several primary care practices in an effort to ensure an adequate number of inpatient referrals to support their expanding hospital network. They also purchased several quote-unquote distressed hospitals without performing the appropriate level of financial, administrative, clinical, and quality assessment. Each new institution had significant financial impairment that the Allegheny General Hospital Foundation absorbed post-acquisition. As an example, AHERF purchased 2 medical schools without a clear need for both. The first, the Medical College of Pennsylvania, had a strong academic and research reputation, but also had a $3 million net operating loss during the year of purchase. The second medical school, the Hahnemann Medical School, also had strong academic programs and came with an additional $123 million in fiscal debt, with small operating margins in its affiliated hospitals. AHERF also did not have an established strategy for provider expansion, and in the push for vertical integration, they hired many physicians at high prices. As an example, they acquired 310 primary care providers in Philadelphia for a total cost of $100 million. They also chose to manage all of their billing centrally from Pittsburgh and would send patients bills through the mail for co-payments rather than collecting them at time of service. This led to a significant reduction in collections of co-payments of only 20%, with significant revenue losses. AHERF also pursued an aggressive recruitment strategy for research faculty and clinical faculty, with the promise of high salaries, new buildings, large lab spaces, and research support staff. However, due to ongoing financial strains, AHERF was not able to sustain promised salaries. Building and construction was far behind schedule, and support staff were not hired. This resulted in a significant net loss with the addition of these new faculty, as they were not able to be as productive as originally anticipated. In terms of governance strategy, it's been mentioned that AHERF did not have the ideal governance strategy. It had a much larger parent board of trustees than recommended by most health industry experts, with a total of 25 to 35 members. In addition, AHERF had a network of different boards responsible for different operations, with little overlap and limited communications between the boards. This resulted in board members not having visibility of decisions made by other boards and ineffective oversight of AHERF operations. Many of the board members also had conflicts of interest, which impacted their ability to make appropriate decisions for AHERF. In addition, as was previously mentioned, AHERF's chief executive officer also dominated all board decisions and structured board meetings with very limited time for discussion on decisions from other board members. He also created a culture in which any board members who dissented from his opinion were pressured to leave if they were to ask any tough questions. Thus, the board failed to take appropriate action and to develop strategies to curtail the ambitious expansion plans of the CEO. Finally, AHERF accountants and external auditors should have provided appropriate oversight of the CEO and board activities. AHERF did not release a comprehensive annual financial report until 1998, 12 years after the start of its rapid expansion. The external auditor hired by AHERF, Coopers and Lindbrand, had been involved in several corporate scandals and somehow gave AHERF a clean bill of financial health until just prior to the declaration of bankruptcy, with its last report issued in June 1997. Finally, AHERF should have exercised caution in relation to the extent of long-term financing by bond debt, which contributed significantly to the final dollar amount in its bankruptcy claim. So in conclusion, we presented a summary of the internal and external factors that led to the AHERF bankruptcy. We're available to take any questions.